So but the motion is not the force. Does that make sense? The distinction there, the force is like, that's the pull that causes that to experience free fall. You see the difference there? Okay. This next one's kind of a mind blower. Another name for force of gravity is weight. Okay. How much you weigh, that's how hard gravity is pulling on you. Okay. In the United States, we measure that in pounds. That's how much force gravity is pulling on you. In science, we'd say how many newtons. Okay. Okay. Think of here's an extreme example, counter example, I guess. If we took you to deep outer space, you would be considered what? Weightless. Why? There's no force of gravity acting on you. But would you have mass? Yeah, you'd still have substance. You all right with that? Killian.
How do you measure the force of gravity like of other planets?
We will get there maybe this semester, maybe next. Okay. Right now we're stuck on the surface, on or near the surface of the Earth. Okay. All right. Next up is friction. So friction is the only one that disobeys this labeling convention. We're just doing a lowercase f. That's because there's more stuff coming, more labels for that. So lowercase f is friction, and the cause of friction is the roughness between surfaces. Roughness between surfaces. Okay. And this always acts in the opposite direction that the surface wants to slip or slide. It always acts in the opposite direction the way the object wants to slip or slide. It always acts parallel to the surface. Always acts parallel to the surface. Try that. Love these lecture data, don't we? Okay, air resistance. Multiple collisions with air molecules. You stick your hand outside of a window of a moving car, you experience air resistance. Okay. And this always acts in the opposite direction of motion. Always acts in the opposite direction of motion. Always acts in the opposite direction of motion. Good there. Normal force, oh, sorry, before we get into that. Can an inanimate object exert force? So I got a story for you. So I've got two marks that are like been in my life a lot. Like my brother Mark, and I have a roommate Mark. And lots of stories about both of them. So when I was in college, my roommate Mark, during the summer, was a whitewater rafting / backpacker, leader, mountaineer, usually backpacker guy. The company they worked for had pretty cheap tents, and so when it rained at night, the water would be collecting on the roof, and he'd have to wake up every hour or two and push up on the roof of the tent to like let the water spill out. That make sense? Okay. So he did that all summer. Comes back to Purdue. We had our beds lofted, meaning they're like bunk beds without the lower bunk, so we're sleeping close to the ceiling. So one night we go to bed, and it's raining out. He wakes up in the middle of the night, opens his eyes, sees what he thinks is the roof of the tent, like close to him. Like, oh man, and he emptied out this water. So he goes to push on what he thinks is the roof of the tent, it's really the ceiling. And he's pushing on this, like, wow, that's a lot of water. Pushes harder. He's like, wow, that's heavy. Sticks both hands up there, like, oh man, this is crazy. Pushes. Okay. I wake up to him, both hands, both feet planted on the ceiling, pushing as hard as he can, like, no! Like, the bed is like totally bowing. I'm like, Mark, wake up. God, man, I thought I was gonna die. Like, that was so much water was gonna just crush me. Was the ceiling exerting a force on my roommate? Yes. With as much force as my roommate was putting on the ceiling, that's exactly as much force as the ceiling was exerting back on him. Did an inanimate object exert force? Yes. Okay. So, yes, it is definitely possible. Like if you run into a wall, do you feel it? Yeah. It exerted a force on you. I mean, you exerted a force on it, but it exerted a force on you. Okay. So we call this a normal force. This is a supportive force from a surface. A supportive force from a surface. Here, this one's kind of harder to like comprehend. Think of it this way. If someone was standing on a trampoline and you didn't see the person, could you look at the trampoline and know that someone was standing on it? Yeah, the trampoline would be like flexing, it would be like stretching, like, okay? So the trampoline is supporting that person. in the same way, just not near as much. The molecules of the floor are stretching, supporting me. If I could personify the molecules under me right now, they're like, oh my goodness, this guy is so heavy. And then if I'd step off, they're like, oh, thank you. And now these guys are like, oh man, I wish you would go back over it. Does that make sense? Like there's a supportive force. Okay, we call it normal. So this always acts perpendicular to the surface. Always acts perpendicular to the surface. That's where this name comes from. Normal is a Greek word that means sober. So when you are normal, you're standing upright, you're standing perpendicular to the ground. If you're not normal, you're having a hard time standing upright, perpendicular. Okay, so we've adopted this normal as a geometric term. That means perpendicular. You might have heard it in geometry class, maybe, but it means perpendicular. I would change it, but I'm not that important in the physics world. Okay? Good? Tension? This is a rope. It's from a rope, string, cable, anything ropish, stringish, yarn, dental floss, whatever. Okay? So, boom. Alex, push me.
Pushing.
Push me. Come on, man. Push.
Pushing someone.
Okay? You can't push with a rope. The only thing you can do is pull.
Oh, I got you.
Okay? Do that. So, it always pulls parallel to the rope. Always pulls parallel to the rope. Do that. Last one. Applied force. This is from a living object or machine. Sure. Living object or machine. You guys have like a miscellaneous drawer in your house? I don't know where to stick it. Just throw it in the miscellaneous drawer. Applied force kind of has that feel. Like, I don't know what we call it. I don't know. Let's call it applied force. It's kind of like this catch-all thing. Okay with that? Okay. So, now that we have, these are our forces in our toolbox, we're going to learn how to use them. So, here are the rules of how to do force diagrams, known as free body diagrams. The You're welcome to write those down, but I think you're gonna get a working understanding of them as we go through those. So the rules of the game are illustrates the forces acting on an object. We draw the forces as vectors, starting from the center of center of mass of the object. We only draw forces, we don't draw motion stuff. It's just a force, just depicting the forces. This next point is, we'll talk about this quite a bit, how the forces are the thing, only forces that are acting on the object, not forces that the object is exerting on other things. It's just what forces are acting on the object is the victim, which we'll explain here in a second. And last thing, forces are only exerted when objects are in physical contact with other objects. It has to be touching in order to exert a force. The only exception to that is gravity. You don't have to be touching anything for gravity to be acting. Okay? So, those are the rules. So if I'm standing here, I want to do a free body diagram of me standing here at rest. I'm going to draw me as a box with a belly button. That belly button represents the center of mass. Okay. So, what forces are acting on me? Gravity. We're here. We're on or near the surface of the earth. So gravity is a thing. Will always be a thing for objects on or near the surface of the earth. Okay. Am I in free fall right now?
No.
Why not?
Normal force.
There's a supportive force from the floor. A normal force, perpendicular to the surface. Good with that? There's a free body diagram. Not too bad. Good. Okay. Let's say that I am kicking. While I'm kicking the box, I want you to visualize the free body diagram. The force is acting on the box while I'm kicking it. And we have a hypothesis of what that free body diagram is going to look like. Here we have gravity going straight down. It's on a supportive floor. Is normal force. Okay, I'm pushing it. So you have applied force. And it's on, and friction is present. It's sliding this way, so friction opposes that slipping and sliding. How do we do? Okay. Some people ask, what about air resistance? And that's a great question. Here's my default for this class. Always include friction. Always ignore air resistance. Unless it tells you explicitly in the problem to not do that. Okay? Friction's a thing, always. Air resistance is not a thing, always. Unless the problem says, hey, include air resistance. Or hey, ignore friction. But your default, go in with it. Friction's there, air resistance is not. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
If there was air resistance, it would be going which way? Is it legal to have two forces going in the same direction?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Sound good? Now, I get this box going. And it's now sliding. So, kicking this, and while it's sliding before it stops, what would be the three-body diagram? While it's sliding along the floor. Friction's still a thing. Thumbs up when you have a guess. Okay, gravity, normal force, friction. What's going to the right? Am I able to exert a force after it leaves my foot? And no, I can't like go and like Jedi it. Does that make sense? So, what's causing it to keep sliding to the right?
Inertia.
Okay. The inertia has velocity. Is inertia a force?
No.
No, inertia is not a force. There is no force going in the direction of motion. Okay? That's the free body diagram. Okay? So check this out. Here's kind of like the blow by blow if we were like, I looked at nurse's journal entry for the day. It's sitting there like, yeah, man, this is cool. I'm at rest. This is good. Life is good. Then all of a sudden this foot came out of nowhere and like started pushing me. I was like, no! Did not like that. Okay? So it's doing what it doesn't want to do. And I'm putting it into motion. So once it's in motion, it's now like, hey, let's just keep doing this. If there was no friction, what would happen to this box? It would keep on sliding. I'm like, yes. But there is friction. It's like, that's such a drag. It's like, man. Does that make sense? It finally stops. It's like, all right, now that I'm stopped, you might as well stay stopped. But while it's in motion, it wants to keep on going. That's the free body diagram. There's no forces going in the direction of motion. That's definitely, it's legal. Okay, so just because something's moving in a certain direction doesn't mean there has to be a force. There was a force at one moment in time to put it in motion. You all right with that? Okay. Anytime you have a object on an incline, a ramp, anything like this, my recommendation would be to draw it tilted like that. Okay. Is gravity doing A or B? Gravity acts straight down all the time. Good with that? Okay. Is normal force acting A or B? Normal force always acts perpendicular to the surface, the supportive surface. So the correct answer is B. with that? Okay. Here's a trick that I coach students to do. Let's pretend there's ice on this surface. What would the stapler do? Slide down. So friction always opposes the direction the surface wants to slip or slide. So friction is acting which way? Up the ramp, parallel to the surface. Look at that. That would be the free body diagram of a stapler at rest on incline. Okay. What about you leaning up against a tree? What forces are present? You sit here and lean on the tree. Do all stuff. Yeah, we'll get there. So I'm good with gravity and normal force. They're kind of easy. What would happen if the tree disappeared all of a sudden? Right? So, the tree is exerting what on me? It's a supportive force. We're going to call it a normal force. All of a sudden, I've got two normal forces. I should make a distinction between those two. This is from the ground, this is from the tree. All right, with that, perpendicular to the surface of the tree. Okay. What would happen if I was standing on ice? Which way would it go? My feet would slide. Okay. So friction is acting which way? Opposes that slipping or sliding. That make sense? Okay. If you've ever done a wall sit, after a while, this burns. And your body tends to do what?
Give out. Because you're not exerting the same amount of force.
Starts to slip down. If the tree had a surface of ice on it, which way would you slip? So friction says, does that make sense? So we've got two forces of friction. We've got one from the ground and one from the tree. Good? Yeah. All right, so visualize or sketch your hypothesis for a free body diagram of the rock. up when you have a guess. Gravity, normal force, friction, we've got some forces going up to the left. We're going to call that tension, or we're going to call that applied force. What is the object in physical contact with the rock? The person or the rope? Rope. So because of that, we're going to call that tension. Does that make sense? Okay. What about, everybody go with that? What about a three-body diagram of you pulling the rock? So we've got gravity, you're on a supportive surface, you have normal force. If you're on ice, what would happen? You would slip. Which way would your feet slip? Whoop! Are you trying to pull? That makes sense? Okay. So friction opposes that slipping or sliding and acts which way? To the left. Okay, real quick, time out here. Which way are you going to be moving if you're able to pull this rock? To the left. Which way is friction acting? On you. Also to the left. Friction does not always act in the opposite direction of motion. It always acts in the opposite direction the surfaces want to slip or slide. Do you see the difference there? You're moving this way. And that's because friction. You good with that? Okay. The last force I want to highlight, is it A or B? I'll give you a hint, it's not both. Remember this statement? Only draw forces that are acting on the object, not forces that the object is exerting on other things. The correct answer is B. Okay. A is what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing. You're the victim. What's happening to you? And that's the force of tension. Good with that? Have a great rest of the day.
Okay, math.
So